Hello there, and welcome to another edition of WADR's Gender Program 50/50, broadcasting from West Africa, Democracy Radio 94.9 FM in Dakar, Senegal, and also live on our partner stations in Liberia, the Gambia, and Sierra Leone. If you're listening to us anywhere around the world via WADR.org, thank you for connecting with us, as always. My name is Nadidi Titi, and I'm the host of the program. 50/50 is a platform dedicated to discussing gender equality and equity, promoting equal opportunities for all genders, fostering an inclusive and women-friendly environment, and examining social issues from diverse perspectives to address the unique impacts on individuals of different genders. Listeners, today we are tackling a topic that remains largely in the shadows: abuse against men. The issue of abuse against men is often overlooked and stigmatized, despite societal perceptions that primarily associate, for instance, domestic abuse to female victims. Many men experience physical, emotional, and psychological abuse too. We'll explore the cultural and societal barriers that prevent men from speaking out, the misconceptions surrounding male victimhood, and the resources available to support them. Understanding and addressing this hidden issue is crucial for fostering inclusive approach to tackling abuse.
Society thinks that men, they are not to be weak. That's how society thinks.
So the reason why men become so afraid or are afraid to speak out, it is because it would take people some time to really believe that story.
We welcome your contributions via our WhatsApp number +221 78184541. Again, the number is +221 78184541. You can also share your thoughts on our social media platforms. On X and Instagram, it's at WADR News. On Facebook, find us at West Africa Democracy Radio English Service. Please remember to start your message with the hashtag 50/50. If you are not already following us, make sure to do so to stay updated on all our discussions and episodes. We also stream live online at WADR.org. To recap, our handles are at WADR News on X and Instagram, and West Africa Democracy Radio English Service on Facebook.
Stay tuned. Your gender program 50/50 will be right back. And we are back. This is 50/50.
You're welcome once again to 50/50 with me, Na Didi Teti. Domestic violence or abuse in general is often thought of as a women's issue, with male perpetrators and female victims. However, the reality is that men can also be victims of abuse. Yet, this topic remains largely a taboo subject and under-discussed in society. However, the reality is that abuse knows no gender. Men, like women, can be subjected to physical violence, emotional manipulation, and psychological torment. The difference lies in the societal response, or lack of it. While there are numerous support systems for female victims, men often find themselves with limited resources and little understanding from those around them. And in the end, most men shy away from speaking up. We will engage a constitutional lawyer and human rights advocate, Evans Ufeli, as he shares his perspective on this often less discussed matter. But first, let's hear from some of you on why this issue remains so difficult to talk about, especially among men. WADR's Darlington Pogba spoke to some people on the streets of Monrovia on why most men would barely speak up in situations where they have been abused.
Society thinks that men, they are not to be weak. That's how society thinks. For example, if a man tells me that this girl has harassed me or abused me, I try to explain to Smiley that way. People will say, look, why will you think that way? Or why will you be lying to us? How possible can that be? That you were assaulted or abused by this lady? You more stronger than a woman. mostly they can say women are weaker vessels or weak vessels. So why will a woman harass you or exhort you, the man? That's how society makes us to think. Cultural norms. Man, you are not supposed to cry. Don't cry too much. You are a man. Don't do this one. Don't do that one. This is for a woman. This is for a man. Don't do this. Don't do that. Even though you feeling a pinch, then they will say don't cry because you man. Ain't seen it. But society thinks that man is much stronger than woman. So meaning that he should not feel too much pain. Even if he feeling a pain, he should not cry. He should just remain and that you should muster the courage. Yes, as a man, I don't supposed to cry. As a man, a woman cannot rape me or abuse me. And 10 to 20% of men have experienced such a thing in their lives. Yes, but because of them being stigmatized, they choose to keep it a secret, even if it happens.
There are lots of relationships that we know that these things happen. Why it is true that you need to get into relationship, it is always important when the woman is harsh, the man will be cool. And when the man is harsh, the woman will be cool. But not having a harsh woman that is abusive. No, it takes away the value of the man within the home. What more about a woman, abusing a man, beating on a man, for example, and you think it is a safe home? No. So the reason why men at times become so afraid or are afraid to speak out, it is because it would take people some time to really believe that story. Many people who you would tell that story to wouldn't believe it because the man should be the head of the home. The man should have the final authority within the home. He has the authority. In fact, he is providing for the home. So once you have an abusive relationship coming from the angle of the man, and the man sees it as healthy as it could be for him, and he decides to speak out, many people will not believe it. Many people will not believe that story. So that's one of the reasons. Now, it sounds comical, right? That you go one day, maybe you tell your friends at your job site, you say, my woman is very abusive. How does that happen? The woman beats on me, and I see it not healthy anymore, and I want to leave. Sometimes they will even laugh at you because they expect you to marry a woman who will be understanding. They expect you to marry a woman who you can control and not the other way around, the woman controlling you. So I think the reason is just people will find it difficult to accept the story that a woman is very abusive on her husband and a man is coming out to speak.
They are usually abused. They are afraid of speaking out, that people will laugh at them. People will, try to say, oh, move for your man, lying or something. And sometimes men who are usually abused by the women in the home, they don't speak out because of so many reasons. Like for example, right, if a man and his family or a man and his wife get into confusion or noise, and that may take the case to one or two persons or community dwellers or town chief or elders of the time. They are called upon to say and explain what actually happened within the home. The man try to speak out his mind. People who will be in that case or that surrounding will feel like, oh, this man is just saying the things, is lazy, or sometimes maybe the man in the home, his wife beat on him, and then he go and say, oh, chief, I brought my wife, complain my wife usually beat on me. He will be like a laughing stone in the community. So these are things that sometimes make men usually keep quiet, do not speak when they are abused. Okay, so for another example where this man and his sisters in a family, right, and their father or mother passed off, and then you see people going to sympathize with them, people saying my condolence, and then the sisters are there crying, and whenever they go to sympathize or see them in that manner, they will sometimes say, man, take heart, you don't cry too much because high esteemed person in the home, so you don't need to cry. But they will allow the women, because we are weak-minded person, to say, oh, let the women cry and you act like men. So
what do you think it is actually this way. Because as he said, you visit a funeral service and then you see when a guy is crying, they normally say, Mama, you don't have to cry this way because you are a man, you are a male, you don't have to cry. We expect the women to cry this way. So is it that men normally don't have much feelings or don't have that empathy? Maybe for the person who died, or is that how the standard the society has set in this country?
No, well, when you look at things, men as a whole in the family, the man is the head. Sometimes as a head, you just have to see some things and be brave and be courageous and let go some things. Because if everything in the home, they will say, where's the man?
As we've heard, the silence surrounding male victims of abuse is often reinforced by deep-rooted cultural norms and stereotypes. Society tends to view men as protectors, providers, and inherently strong individuals. And for constitutional lawyer and human rights advocate Barrister Evan Sufeli, this perception creates a significant barrier for men who suffer in silence, fearing that admitting to abuse could lead to ridicule, shame, or a perceived loss of masculinity. In the following interview I had with Barrister Evan Sufeli, he highlights how societal perceptions of masculinity plays a significant role in contributing to the taboo surrounding male abuse. Traditional notions of masculinity often emphasize traits such as strength, stoicism, and emotional control, which can create barriers for men who experience abuse. He also highlighted the gaps in our various legal systems, especially in Africa, when it comes to protecting male victims of domestic abuse.
Well, it's because society has conditioned men to be warriors and to be the ones who should bear the brunt and not show any form of weakness. And for the victim, in order not to be called what they call woman rapper in Nigeria, in order not to be seen as weak, men want to bottle up abuse and harassment. Okay, because you will be laughed at or you'll be mocked if you show any sign of weakness as a man in the African context. So that in itself created the leeway for people to bottle up all their challenges, all their harassment, abuse, all kinds of domestic violence against the boy child or the male child. Men, they will conceal it. They will conceal it because if you look at the historical antecedent of the formation of Africa, men are regarded as the ones who go for hunting expedition during war. The men are sent to go to war. When they are to get married in a certain culture, they are asked to display some level of strength by showing how large their farmlands are or how much of dexterity or how much of challenges. In some places, they send them to go and kill lion or kill wild animal or something. So when that is the foundation, when you come and start to talk about abuse, that you have been abused and you have been harassed and you are asking that society should give you justice or that you will be recompensed as a result of abuse and all that, people will be laughing at you. Even the law is even slow to move its hands to work in your favor or to look at the details of what you have presented.
You talked about instances where when some men dare to speak up, people would laugh at them. What are some of the misconceptions that have surrounded men who speak up about they being abused and it ending up sort of gagging other men from speaking up in case they go through any of such situations?
There is a general presumption of strength and dominance on the side of the man. Even when you look at the religious rites and material, you will see how religion also consciously push the narrative of masculinity, sometimes patriarchy and all that. It is pushed to define the male human condition to be one that by birth is clinically supposed to fight against all odds. Just like Olarotimi wrote in the Gods Are Not to Be Blamed. He said the struggle of man begins at birth. Okay, for a man, there's no excuse for you to be weak or for you to be conquered or for you to be harassed or for you to be abused. The people whom you want to go and report to will tell you that why didn't you stage a fight there and then? Why didn't you crush whoever abused you? Why didn't you put up a resistance and save yourself and save others? Okay, so you always find that. So not many men want to, except maybe the highly educated men or the extremely philosophical men in society that will say, wait a minute, the fact that he didn't put up resistance, the fact that he didn't crush the adverse party does not mean the adverse party have a right to abuse him. Let's reinterrogate this. You can only have that in a thinking society. A thinking society. Not most African society where there's hasty conclusions. People are largely preoccupied with the cross of survival and they don't even know when they have been harassed and abused. Okay, sometimes because they are too poor to voice out, or sometimes they are averagely okay but have no exposure to voice out, and especially also because the laws laid down have made provision for largely to protect women whom society see as a weaker vessel. Just like you look at Section 317 of the Nigeria of the criminal laws of Nigeria that talks about 375 that talk about raping the female gender and that what constitutes rape and all that. And from that section hold down, you see about a lot of laws talking about the protection from harassment, protection from abuse, protection from assault, and all that extensively to protect the female gender. So you don't come and see that. In fact, they won't say it is impossible by law to sexually harass a male. Not until recently, where we now have the Violence Against Persons and Prevention Act that now made just one provision, one subsection for the male child and all that. So even the laws unconsciously, legislations unconsciously does not make provision for that, to put men under that condition of protective custody from harassment and abuse.
Many argue that the laws are generally that way because women have largely been at the receiving end of abuse and all that. But it still doesn't take away the fact that others beyond women are abused too. Because in Ghana as well, if you look at our Criminal and Other Offences Act, technically a man cannot be raped. So it caters for women solely as compared to men in that regard. What are some of the consequences? What are the effects these situations have on, for instance, boys or men who are abused and are unable to speak about it because of all these things they fear will happen? People would mock them, people will stigmatize them, among others. What kind of effect does it have on them in the long run?
The effect gets back on society. I've seen men that are misogynist, they hate women because they are coming from abuse. I've seen some that hate their parents, hate their uncles, hate anybody that is elderly around. And you see it in their behavior, you see it in their feelings. You see it when they exhibit their actions. So society gets to bear the brunt of all these grievances bottled up in a child who is now an adult, who has developed a pathological hatred for the female gender and has become a misogynist and have been treating women that way because of the pattern. Because of that pattern, society didn't come to his rescue when he was abused, when he was under abuse for as long as it took him. So when he gets old, he turns it back against society because all this abuse is stored up somewhere in the human system. It gets stored up somewhere. And by the time you start to react, sometimes you may not even know the reason you don't like some persons or some gender or an age bracket, or we don't even know why you don't, because it's stemming from abuse. And most times, because men don't speak, they don't get therapy. So they don't get therapy, and so they are not healed. And now they are adults. You cannot give them therapy now. It's late. It's late. So they get a hold on society, and unleash all kind of behavioral patterns against who, when, how, anybody, and any, depending on the circumstance. And that's not a way to keep a healthy society. A healthy society should be conscious the intakes and outcomes, okay, of conduct, and ensure that every conduct that is untowards is addressed against either a male or a female, should be given the right penalty, so society will come alive and have a balanced construction.
I will go for a short break. When I return, we will explore how society can make it easier for male victims of abuse to speak up.
You are listening to WADR's gender program 50/50. The program is live on 94.9 FM in Dakar, Senegal, Alternative Youth Radio in Lofa County, Liberia, and around the world on WADR.org.
You're welcome back. You're still listening to 50/50 with me, Nadidi Tete. We are also live on Radio Gbaf FM 91.3 in Sierra Leone. Let's continue our conversation with Barrister Evan Sufeli, who is a constitutional lawyer and human rights advocate. Now, as a way forward, he has emphasized the need for a more inclusive approach to abuse that recognizes and addresses the experiences of all victims, regardless of the gender.
We have to take this conversation to the public domain, and we have to create courses, have conferences, have TED Talks. We need to have a social media campaign about abuse as a general concept, okay? Just like we have in Nigeria, we have what we call the Cybercrime Act. Now, in the Cybercrime Act, cyberbullying, cyber stalking, all that, it is not gender sensitive. It is not gender sensitive. So we should bring this conversation to the fore and then make more laws that will not be gender sensitive. Okay, that what applies to a male should apply to a female. You know why I say so? I say so because if you look at, let's say, cyber stalking, for example, a male or a female can be guilty of cyber stalking. All you need to do is to, disparage people on the social media or through electronic means, reduce their reputation in the eyes of the right-thinking members of society, and fracture their esteem by your posts or words or writing and all that. Then it passes for that.
In terms of our laws, do we have some of them centered around, protecting or helping men who are abused?
In the case we've had over the time, it's been about one direction. So the conversation should stem from, there should be a conscious effort. And the 52 countries in Africa put together should have a common treaty, on that subject. Let's start from there. If we have a common treaty on that subject, then we narrow it down to the public space. We have conferences and conventions on it. Take it to the schools, the post-primary schools, okay? And then lay them. Then there's an institution in Nigeria called National Orientation Agency. I don't know whether they have it in other countries, but we should have national orientation on those issues and those conversations, so that in doing so we'll balance the formation, so that the male child does not now begin to think that abuse is not for him. And anybody can be abused, but it takes a thoughtful society, a growing society, a thinking society, a society that can make laws to that effect. Because I know that in England, in the US and all that, if you abuse, whether male or female, they have enough legislation, enough laws to address all the issues on that reference. So we should stop seeing people as superpowers. Africa should stop seeing men as superhumans who can bear all pains and never give up and all that. We should stop that and then put a balance in this conversation.
That was Barrister Evans Ufeli, who is a constitutional lawyer and human rights advocate. It's been great having you join me. Remember to follow our discussions on X and Instagram at WADR News, on Facebook at West Africa Democracy Radio English Service, and online at wadr.org. Also, you can leave me a message via our WhatsApp number +221 7818 45421. Again, the number is +221 7818 45421. I am Nadidi Teti. Join us next week for another edition of 50/50.
We thank you for listening to this program in Liberia on Alternative Youth Radio 98.9 FM, Lufa County, Kwakete Radio 100.9 FM, Baga, Voice of Liberia FM 104.1 Monrovia, DCN Radio 91.3 FM, Riversess. In Sierra Leone, we thank our listeners on Radio Bath 91.3 FM. In the Gambia on New Me FM 94.0 North Bank region.